This is just a test for the live stream, thanks.
I can hear you, thanks.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thanks for your patience as we got our new our live stream up and running. I'm just going to call the regular scheduled council meeting of February 9th, 2026 to order. As we call the meeting to order, we just like to acknowledge that we do our business on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations and how their connections to these lands and adjoining waters continue to this day. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We do have Councillor Braithwaite joining us online today. She's not feeling too well and has a bit of laryngitis for meetings, so she has a raspy voice. Next order of business is adoption of the minutes. We have two from January 26th, 5 and 7 p.m. Moved and seconded. Any changes, corrections, or amendments to those minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We have receipt of committee minutes, and I'm just going to point out that it says Heritage Commission. It says that the minutes from the Advisory Planning Commission, it should read that the minutes from the Heritage Commission on October 1st be received. So with that change, we can get a motion to approve all three sets of minutes. Moved and seconded. We just usually receive those since they're already approved. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. We move to Mayor's remarks. We are entering Black History Month. I do want to acknowledge that Oak Bay is, which I think there's several events going on in the region. So I just want to take a bit of moment just to acknowledge that. Also want to just acknowledge that Oak Bay was voted the 12th most livable city in Canada by the Globe and Mail. So I think I think we all feel that way about living here. It's a pretty special place. Just a couple of things that have been going on over the last week or so. I was able to attend the Victoria Foundation put on a governance one-on-one workshop for nonprofits, and as I sit on a number of nonprofits and it's relevant to governance in general, I found it very valuable, and I was able to share it internally here as well to some of our committees and commissions and ancillary bodies. I want to just acknowledge that my daughter's Bays United soccer team won their final game and is going to the provincials this summer, so go her. I also had a chance to attend the Girl Guides Pathfinders meeting where they were learning about government, and super interesting to hear the voices of 9 to 12-year-olds and their perspective of what's important and what government does. I really thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity. And they may be joining us in chambers one of these nights. They wanted to come and witness us working in person. For just your awareness, there was a new CRD under the Governance and First Nations Committee met last week and recommended approval for a new engagement framework with the First Nations, and it's quite an interesting document that concludes a number of years of work. So if you're interested, it's on the board agenda this coming Wednesday. And last but certainly not least, just on the police board, the board met last week, but also I had the opportunity and I guess a couple of things. One, the board manual is being updated, but I had the chance to visit the Justice Institute for the first time, which is in New West. I went there as part of my role on the BC Association of Police Board Executives, which is an oversight body for all the police boards. And really interesting to see what they were doing. They recently got a grant that allowed them to add more equipment, and they've scaled up their class size from 64 to up to 144 police officers, which is addressing a massive backlog, but are still struggling as they, most post-secondary or even pre-secondary education in BC is funded to a minimum of 40 to 45%, mostly over 50%, and the Justice Institute is exempt from all the rules and has been frozen, meaning that the provincial share of the total cost is less than around 7%. So it all comes downloaded onto municipalities who have to directly pay for the training that go in there. So very interesting meeting, interesting to see it firsthand and to see how the training is done. But really appreciate their scaling up, because between retirements and Surrey transitioning from RCMP to municipal, there's been a real problem of keeping staffing at the municipal police level across the province. So it's nice to see there's some work going on there to resolve that at a structural level. Those are all my comments. I now have the opportunity, so we have some new faces here, people who don't normally attend, either online or in person. We do invite at every meeting a public comment period, so this is things that are not on the agenda and are not land use specific, but are welcome to just anything that is of interest to members of the public, either things you want to tell us about or ask us about. This is an opportunity for that public input. We do this at every meeting, so if anybody here wishes to come forward and talk to us about anything on your mind, you're welcome to do so. I see people look like they're trying to decide who's going to not go first, so why doesn't somebody come forward and I'll walk you through the process. I do appreciate this can be a bit intimidating, so very simple. If you come forward, you can sit at the desk here, just state your name, municipality of residence. You don't have to give your address, just where you live, and push the button, and once you've given your name, you have up to 3 minutes to speak to council.
Thanks to the Mayor and Councillor for this opportunity to speak. My name's Jennifer Scarth and I'm an Oak Bay resident. I'm here with my neighbour of Monteith Street to request action on parking management. The lack of management has created a serious safety concern for residents and needs immediate attention, as well as a long-term plan to mitigate parking chaos and damage to an ecologically sensitive area. The south extension of Monteith Street is a cul-de-sac which borders the eastern side of Firefighter Park. Bowker Creek runs underground diagonally across the baseball field. Our road is very narrow, only 12 feet wide, with grass boulevards and no curbs. At the present time, there are no signs or barriers of any kind to indicate parking rules and restrictions. You'll recall that in the summer and fall of 2024, during the building of the new fire truck garage, the fire hall parking lot was closed to public parking. In what was supposed to be a temporary measure, the public was directed to park on Monteith, Luley, and Cranmore Streets. The resulting increased parking on our boulevards has caused destruction of the grass, leaving a rutted, muddy area which has continued to degrade over the ensuing 18 months. During the spring, summer, and fall of 2025, on weekdays, every Saturday, and many full weekends, baseball teams park 15 to 20 cars on both sides of our street, often blocking driveways. In the absence of signs to prohibit them, people drive and park on the grass that surrounds the baseball diamond. Our safety concern: at these peak parking times, residents are unable to access their driveways, and the narrowing of the road does not allow emergency vehicles to access our houses. Note that because this increased volume occurs on weekends, parking enforcement is unavailable to us, so our only option is to call the non-emergency police line. In August of 2025, after many emails and phone calls, we met on site with the heads of both parks and traffic to create a plan to manage this problem. At that meeting, it was estimated by the head of traffic that there is room for a maximum of 7 parallel parked vehicles on the west side of the street only. At their request, we drew up and polled our neighbors about a plan to designate parking spots by adding signs and placing gravel to prevent the further degradation of the boulevard. Now, 6 months later, there's been no movement on this plan. 2 weeks ago, we were belatedly informed by the head of traffic design that any changes to this area must be approved by archaeology, which I understand is a provincial department. Parenthetically, the current damage to the parkland, rutted and trenched by vehicles as it is, would not be acceptable to the archaeologist. Our request: as we head into another spring and baseball season, for the safety of the residents and while we await a longer-term plan, we urgently require signs to indicate the 7 available parking spaces and prohibit parking on the opposite side, to prevent blockage of our road and driveways, and to prohibit parking on the grass overlying Bowker Creek. Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking to us this evening.
Thank you.
You can certainly take us away with engineering and follow-up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Anybody else wish to come to council? It could be about, no? I do have to close down this section of the meeting if no one's wanting to speak to us, if there's nobody else wanting to address council. Again, this is just on any items of interest that are not on the agenda tonight. Okay. We will then move on to the next items on the agenda. Moving on to section 7, we have our committee of the whole recommendations from the meeting held on January 26th. So we have recommendations to council. There's 2 that came out of that. One, that the report be received for active transportation, and that the mayor write to the province, behalf of mayor and council, to write to the province to advocate for the unpausing of the active transportation grants, etc. So can I have a mover for that, those recommendations?
I move the recommendations under item 7.1, Your Worship.
Moved, and is there a seconder? Seconded, thank you. This is open to the public, so before I get to any discussion, we don't usually discuss a lot on recommendations from committee of the whole. Any members of the public wish to talk to us about the recommendations on the active transportation network engagement project update from the committee of the whole last week? Not too surprising that it's not people lined up for that one. I'm going to come back to this table and call the question. Actually, is there anybody further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Oh, sorry, Councillor Patterson, my apologies. I know you did oppose at that meeting myself.
Would you like me to speak to it?
No, I think you spoke to it at the last. You can if you wish.
I did speak to the fact that the pedestrian and sidewalk master plan was not included in active transportation, so I didn't support that. But also, just to speak to the second part of it, I just would like to comment that the province paused the 2025-2026 Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program pending a review of the Clean BC programs to ensure that BC's climate plan reflects realities and delivers results for people, communities, and economy. So I think that we should allow them to continue with that work and not try to advance pausing the pause.
I see a hand with Councillor Braithwaite online.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering, I have a motion arising on the active transportation. Would this be an appropriate time to speak to it?
This is related to the recommendation from the committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
I was wondering if I could do a motion arising that the previously requested constraint of the default design standard be removed when developing detailed plans for the active transportation network.
Sorry, can you just read that again for everybody's benefit, and I'll see if there's a seconder.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I apologize for my voice. That the previously requested constraints of a default design standard be removed when developing detailed plans for the active transportation network.
Okay, I think that would probably be in order. Is there a seconder for discussion? Moved and seconded. Okay, your floor.
Yeah, I'm just for a little bit of rationale behind that. I know that staff's going to be coming back with design options that address the traffic and parking needs of each individual street, and will need to work within very real budget constraints. So this motion would basically return us to the original staff recommendation to include AAA design options without requiring them as default in all cases.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to just turn to, if you don't mind, I'm going to just turn to staff. Mr. Rennick, might throw you, put you on the hook here. So my understanding is that there is a motion remaining from council asking for a default design of AAA. We are now into the detailed design phases. Is that, I mean, I guess from engineering's perspective, does that, if this motion were to pass, does that, I guess, free up the design aspects of it, or is it does it make a difference?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. It's It's a challenging one to answer, to be quite honest. The genesis of the motion when council originally passed it was essentially that all designs that council would be presented would assume as a default the all ages and abilities standard and would identify the trade-offs to council if they did not wish that project to meet that particular standard. Frankly, it's kind of a matter for council of, do you want to start at all ages and abilities and work down, or do you want to start at a lower standard and work up? And I would say that either approach is valid, and we would just seek council's direction so that when we're moving forward on these projects, it's clear that we understand what council is looking for when we present detailed designs to council.
Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite, before I go to others? Okay. You might just lower your hand in that case. Thank you. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would ask actually that this amendment motion be ruled out of order. This, if there was the course, changing the course of council as far as a council passed motion to direct a certain standard to be met, I believe should have been made and motivated at the committee of the whole meeting. I don't believe that this fits within a motion arising for adopting a certain approach to consultation on subsequent corridors. And in the alternative, if that is the desire, then I would ask that an explicit motion that repeals council's original direction, supported unanimously, I would add, to have AAA be the default standard, I would ask that the motion actually reference repealing that and be explicit about that.
Okay, thank you. I can't force a change of wording in a motion. So your first point of this is that you consider it to be out of order? I do consider it. Give me a second. I don't think is this raised as a motion arising on this one. I don't consider it out of order. I don't. I think that there is you can raise a point of, yeah, my read of this is that you can raise a point of order on this that's coming out of that report, particularly as this was discussed at that meeting. But I might turn to staff procedurally here. If there was a change, it would have to come this way, correct? Is a motion arising? Ms. Anderson?
Yes, council can bring forward a motion at this time regarding the report from the committee of the whole.
Thank you. That's my interpretation of it, Councillor Appleton. As to the wording, I'll give it to Councillor Braithwaite if she wishes to consider changing the wording. If not, I'm not sure it changes the intent.
I think I'm okay with the wording unless you would suggest that it would be otherwise, but I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I can't compel you to that, and Councillor Appleton, I think the procedure there would be if you wish to make an amendment to change the language, you could do that. I think the outcome of what you're suggesting is the same.
May I, Your Worship?
Please go ahead.
The implication of the council voted unanimously to adopt AAA as the default standard for active transportation corridors. The implication here with the motion that's on the floor is that the previously given direction of council presents a constraint to future design standards. And so then I would ask, if it is the will of council to no longer follow the AAA standard, then I would ask that it be explicitly disposed of and proceed on that basis.
Sure, thank you. My understanding is it's not a requirement at this time, it's the default design piece of that, so there isn't a requirement for AAA design at this point. It's simply the default design. So, okay, I don't have a motion to amend. Any other discussion? Councillor Smart?
Just speaking against the motion, I do really appreciate that we've now given direction to staff to bring back designs in the context of cost so that we can have those important conversations at the table as to whether or not we want to move forward with design options based on costs. So I do feel like that important detail has already been captured, and in the two options that staff just discussed with us, as opposed to looking at a safe design that actually includes a design that would make it so that all ages in our community, seniors, children, everyone in between, can feel safe on the road, and all abilities, and including people that require walkers, mobility scooters, everything, so that we're considering first the safest option, and whether or not we can afford it is, to me, the right approach. Otherwise, we start at this table to become engineers ourselves as we build up a bike network, and that to me is a very challenging situation to be in. I really do think that if cost wasn't a problem, that we would all, of course, want the ability for all ages and abilities in our community to use any sort of cycling infrastructure that we put forward. And so, and I think that's why it was put forward unanimously before. And so I won't be supporting the motion on the table, because I feel like I need that valuable information to know what it would look like to make it as safe as we can.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
Thank you. It's a challenging time financially. We just went through a very detailed report on what we're facing in terms of asset management. I rather liked our engineer's description of starting without a AAA standard and building from there. And that is very much like zero-based budgeting. You begin with nothing, and then you begin to add the things you want to achieve through the budget. I will support the motion. I think it's wise fiscally, and I think that at this time there are so many other competing priorities. I think this is not a terrible decision, so I will support the motion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm in somewhat of the awkward position because I didn't vote in support of receiving some of the report, but my reasoning follows, and I would support this, and the reason for this is, and I will, respecting Councillor Appleton's position on the AAA. However, at the time that those things were put forward, I didn't understand that pedestrian assets were not going to be part of the active transportation plan. And so I took active transportation in the same framework that the province does, and so that it would include pedestrian assets, it would include transit assets, and we would be looking at, and in fact the state of the infrastructure reports that I spoke about earlier, Mr. Robertson's report, recommended highly that we proceed on some of the pedestrian assets. So I still have a goal of getting a more holistic framework for active transportation, so that we are in fact adopting an active transportation network that is suitable for all members of the community, and can be measured in comparison with the provincial standards for all of the assets in the. So for that reason, I will support this, and because I didn't understand originally that active transportation was going to only be cycling.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting this motion. I think it's a little unwise, actually, to start from nothing and try to build. We have a published standard, and we have had discussion quite a bit around this table about it, and also advice from staff that because there was a huge misconception in the community that if it was AAA, it meant hard infrastructure. And we've clearly been advised that that is not the case, that you can create AAA bike routes that don't involve that, and that do protect all users and create safe environments for them to cycle. I am frustrated that we keep having a discussion about that distracts us because of the language of this thing. This is this is an active transportation strategy that doesn't necessarily include pedestrians right now. But I would say that at the moment we have about 180 kilometers of sidewalks in the community, and we have almost no cycling infrastructure. So we'll get to the sidewalk bit and the pedestrian necessities. But at the moment, we have almost nothing for people on bikes. And so sage planning, in my view, means starting with a standard and then moving back from it if cost pressures prevail to make those decisions. But to start from a baseline of zero in a context when we have good guidance for the entire province, I think is just a foolish way to begin. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Smart. You wanted to speak for a second time, but if you don't mind, I'll speak first and then I'll let you go. I think it's always good to have one time, everybody speak once before we get around to second time. Yeah, it's an interesting piece. I don't support this because of the pedestrian piece of it. I think those are two separate issues, but I hold that piece. If I reflect back on when this was originally moved, the original report was back when we were giving direction of doing the original design options to come back to council. And at that time, we did say, well, the recommendation was to include AAA options, and the motion was made at the table to make it the default design. I think where I see the value of this approach is that we are now much more into the detailed design phasing, and we've given direction in the report that was part of the committee of the whole that we are advancing, which is a phased approach to looking at probably the next little while, looking at painted bike lanes and advancing at some point to some other things which are more AAA in nature, again, contingent upon budget. I think where we do have to have a bit of an eye-opener out of that report from last week is that $10 million difference between what is a significant improvement in cycling safety and getting all the way to AAA, and that's a huge gap. And so if we're anticipating that that gap has to be at the front end of that, I struggle with that because I don't think that's necessarily the inherent best approach to it. And I guess the other thing I would say on this one is I do recognize that, well, AAA is thrown out there as the provincial standard for design. It is, again, it's a 20-year-old design standard. And the reality is that we are in very rapidly changing land use between micromobility, e-bikes, and other aspects of things that may be changing in the near future. And I'm very supportive of the approach that this council is advancing through the committee of the whole that's going forward for phasing and detailed design. But I do think that we probably will learn a lot in the next couple of years as we're contemplating that as to how we want to implement some of the other accessibility pieces. So I think this is a prudent approach, to the other members of council. I think that it doesn't change anything, doesn't set restraints, it doesn't prevent us from doing it. I would certainly say it definitely does not set us back to starting from zero and working our way back. We've given direction in terms of what we were expecting over the next 2 years and perhaps phasing going forward. But I do think that we need to probably take away those that very prescriptive wording, which is that it has to have that as a default design piece. I'll go to Councillor Smart, then Councillor Patterson, and then I'll end Councillor Appleton.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that while this is a plan, and I agree primarily the core of this plan is to provide new cycling infrastructure where it doesn't exist. When we have seen staff come forward with projects, they have been very adept at including as many sidewalk and pedestrian improvements as possible with each plan. And so with that, and there were many significant sidewalk and pedestrian improvements in, for instance, the Haltane-Estevan plan that sadly got voted out, which I was disappointed to see. But I feel like staff is giving us the choice along the way when we look at budget and we look at cost and we look at these improvements, at making sure that we're doing improvements to our existing sidewalk network at the same time as providing new cycling infrastructure. And I do feel that staff is currently giving us those options.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And I will just add, I did speak a bit earlier about why the province paused some of the grant funding. And directly from their information, I also note that they want to ensure that it reflects realities and delivers results for people, communities, and economy, aligned with science, affordability, and the needs of people and communities, and includes new and upgraded sidewalks and accessible options. So I think that if the province is taking a second hard look at things in a very difficult economy, it is not wrong for us to do the same thing. I think, in fact, it's wise for us to follow that advice too.
Councillor Patterson, Councillor Appleton, and then Green, and then I'm probably going to get to the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I cannot say enough about how much of a regressive step this is. It can be marketed or it can be stated any number of different ways, but AAA was adopted as the standard by this council because it is a accepted and universally applied design standard. So irrespective of how we interpret it on the ground in Oak Bay, AAA is the provincial standard to achieve a safe environment for all ages and abilities. That is what AAA stands for, all ages and abilities. So by taking a regressive step and stepping away from AAA, we are saying explicitly that we desire and will only fund a less safe and less appropriate bike network for our community. I'm never going to support that. I would have said the comment that you made, Your Worship, was that this takes away the prescriptive wording of the original motion of council. This was to my point. I would ask that if we sought to remove the prescriptive wording of the unanimously supported council directive for AAA as the default, then that motion should reflect repealing that direction. So I want to be very clear that this does not take away the prescriptive wording from the original motion. The original motion stands. This is a regressive step to essentially impede the previous motion of council. I would ask that those members of council that do not want to invest to achieve the AAA standard bring forward a motion to repeal council's direction on AAA being the default and not have a motion such as this which circumnavigates that original direction from council. I would ask that that specific, explicit motion be brought, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. First of all, I think this is not a regressive step. I think it's a realistic one, given the financial issues that we face as a small municipality. Secondly, we are not the only municipality that is rethinking cycling infrastructure. Saanich has just removed the requirement for cycling infrastructure on their Quadra Mackenzie project. They have stepped back. I think Victoria has talked about stepping back in certain places. I think the cost for us is a real issue, and I don't consider it regressive. I do consider it realistic. I also think it is possible to build on the model, and I think our Director of Engineering, in fact, said either approach is valid. Either you start with nothing or you start with AAA and work backwards. So I think that is not an issue. And I really think we need to be careful with our language about how we make decisions at this table. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, and I don't think, forcing us to take a position on anything is not, it's not a good practice. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, they're entitled to take a position, and they're entitled to vote in a certain way. As long as they're well informed and they're representing the community, that's the bottom line for me. So I think we have to be careful about scolding each other about how we vote. I think we just have to follow process. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to comment again. I think I'm just disappointed and, well, actually astounded that we're having this discussion, but also very disappointed we're having this discussion. I also think that if an issue is cost, that moving back from using at least the provincial standard to start with puts us at much bigger risk of not being eligible for any provincial funding at a very time when we're looking for that money. That's the thing that's got us having second thoughts about the expense of the plan that we want to take forward. So it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot to actually move away, in my view, to move away from something that is tried and tested. Yes, other municipalities may be scaling back their efforts right now, but we are just about the only one that has absolutely nothing to show after 15 or 16 years. So to compare us to Saanich or Victoria and rolling back maybe some plans going forward, I think is kind of an irrelevant comparison. Anyway, I'm very disappointed that this motion is in front of us, and I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Actually, it's interesting just hearing the conversation around this table. because I think we have different memories or understanding of what the motion was that was passed. I think there was unanimous support at this table for that because we were at that initial stage of asking for designs to come back for the multiple routes that were on the floor. We've gone through quite an iterative process since then. We've had feedback from the community. We've adjusted those designs. And so we've essentially fulfilled that initial request. We've given some direction to start with, to tackle the majority of the routes immediately and do them to a lower standard with the potential of advancing them to higher standards in future. But that cost differential is large. So I actually don't see this as a repeal. I see this as being much more clear that we've done the default design pieces, we've done some nuancing on it, and this motion, to my mind, essentially, in some ways, just reflects the reality of where we're at right now. And again, we've given some direction. That's what this is, the report going forward is to give those, the plan coming back will give us those options and those tiers and phasing. And certainly my anticipation of that was that staff will follow those designs, which are, if not exactly AAA, will be close to it. And I think we want to make sure that we're moving down that path without being so constrained. So, I think it's actually been a healthy discussion because I think we've actually come at this from different understanding of where we're at and where the next steps are. So, whether or not this passes, that'll adjust it, but it doesn't radically alter the path going forward if it does pass. With that, I'm happy to call the question. So, go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Have the motion read again, please.
Yes, please, Councillor Braithwaite. And my apologies, I didn't write it down.
Thank you, Mayor. That the previously requested constraints of a default design standard be removed when developing detailed plans for the active transportation network.
Thank you. I will call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillors Smart, Appleton, and Watson opposed. That carries. As we don't usually have motions arising on committee of the whole items. Moving here then to item 8.1. These next set of reports do not have public input. So we move first to the Estevan Storm Sewer Project Phase 2 detailed design work, contract change order. Mr. Rennick, Director of Engineering and Public Works. Are you introducing us, or is Mr. Samukovich? Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so this staff report was submitted to request a change order for the extension of the design services to be awarded to McElhaney, our current consultant for the Estevan Phase 1 project, which was substantially completed. Underground facilities were completed of that scope of Phase 1 this year, in 2025. And we're requesting that the contract be extended for the Estevan Phase 2, which goes up from Heron Street to Musgrave, continuing on with the work with the storm, sanitary, and some additional water main work. And so there's another piece there, the CAO be authorized to execute the change order on behalf of the district.
We can deal with the two motions together, correct? Okay. Are there questions of staff? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Mr. Samukovich, thank you for the report. And just a query about it says the additional fundings to address utility issues that were not previously identified, and the work will be completed in Phase 2. Will the Phase 2 overall budget remain the same, or will it? We anticipate it will increase also.
Mr. Samukovich?
The Phase 2 cost will approximately be $5 million. So I think it is in the budget currently. It's just, it would be a new line item for the Estevan project, but it's funded by the utilities. Wouldn't be an extension or pull from reserves.
Yes, thank you for that response. And just another one for Mr. Samukovich. The volume of soil, there is, quite a volume of soil left at the end of the road there. Is there additional cost for the viewing platform, or is that has that been accommodated within the overall budgets for these projects?
Thank you. Through the mayor, we're still working on detailed design for the viewing platform, and so we can really only give high-level costing. Ultimately, that high-level costing for Phase 2 is also based on an engineer's estimate, and ultimately, the cost of that work will be further refined through detailed design, and when that project goes to tender, that will be ultimately when we have the most up-to-date costing, and council will be able to make that final decision at the time of awarding the tender. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
So just for clarification, if I might direct, for our Director of Engineering, so then the viewing platform, is that additional work to the project, or was that actually anticipated right at the start?
Mr. Go ahead.
So the viewing platform is currently in the Phase 1 project, but we are looking at an architectural design, and based on the options they provide to us, we may come to council if there is value to the district to be considered as an extra, but we're trying to keep it within the budget that we currently have.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, so perhaps I can get a motion. Moving the staff recommendation, Councillor Green? Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Very good. We move on to item 9.1, which is zoning bylaw amendments. We'll let the engineering crew go home. Have a good night. We move to 9.1, which is a zoning bylaw amendment for 2444 Cranmore Road. Mr. Green, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. The district has received a zoning bylaw amendment application for the property located at 2444 Cranmore Road. The amendment is a site-specific zoning amendment to the residential R5 zone to increase the floor area ratio from 0.4 to 0.6 in order to achieve bylaw compliance for the existing single-family dwelling and to permit an increase in the allowable front yard paved surface area coverage from 40% to 58% in order to facilitate the development of a new concrete walkway and paved off-street parking area. The application was reviewed by the Advisory Planning Commission on January 21st of this year, and the Commission recommended approval of the application with consideration to reducing the proposed extent of the front yard paving. Staff are recommending that the zoning amendment application be approved and the bylaw adopted. The applicant is also here to answer any questions that council may have on their application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The applicants are here. Are there questions to the applicant or to staff? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few, maybe I'll direct them to staff and then we can turn to the applicant if that's appropriate. I'm not quite sure. And in no particular order, just notes I made while I was looking at this and actually went by the property to take a look. I was interested in the timing and the sequencing of the boulevard tree removal and this particular permit and why that happened in advance of this consideration. So if maybe you could comment on that. It looks like a permit has been achieved, the tree's been removed, even though it was sitting in the area that's now under discussion. Maybe I don't understand, but please, over to you, Mr. Green.
Thank you for the question, for your worship. So originally the applicant was intending to seek removal of that district tree that's in the district's boulevard. However, by the time the application has been being processed, it became apparent that that tree was dying, and our municipal parks arborists went to visit that tree and found the tree to be dying, and therefore that tree was removed. And so the tree issue, if you like, has been excluded from the application request.
That helps. Secondly, I was looking at the application and I just wondered the actual proposal for the paved area for the front now is not very detailed. Would that be kind of the level that we would expect for this particular request? I mean, it shows the area, but we're not getting much information about how it's going to be treated or anything, or maybe I'm missing that. I would like to understand a little bit better about what actually is being proposed in the more extensive in the area that will result if it was approved a more paved area than is currently permitted.
Mr. Green, jury.
through the worship. Obviously, this has been it started off as a bylaw compliance file where work was done without a permit. In order then to request a building permit, we then required the necessary plans, and it was only through that process that then we thought initially it may be a development variance permit, but when we received those plans, we also then determined the number of variances and also an increase in the floor area ratio was required, which then triggered move from a development variance permit to a zoning amendment application. The plans that we have are the plans that we have received from the applicant. We were on the fence initially in terms of trying to seek some better quality plans, and then in the end we decided that we had enough information to enable this application to proceed to council for determination.
Thank you. And just one final question. Given the nature of the request and that it is coming here for deliberation, is it within council's purview to look at the proposal and then suggest some changes, such as I was thinking about screening or softening? I don't know what that would look like, but is that within the realm of the kinds of things that could come forward with this table if this were to go forward?
For your worship, yeah, that is within the purview of council. If council wished to add conditions to that variance or wanted to see a decrease in the amount of front yard paving area or wanted to see some other changes, then obviously council could refer the application back to staff to address with the applicant, depending on the nature of that request. As long as it is reasonable and related to the ask that is before council, then that would be a reasonable request by council.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Green.
Good, thank you. We do have the applicants here if we want to ask them questions, but we'll go now to Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and this is a question not through you, to staff.
You'll be next.
I think, and where the boulevard tree was removed, do we know if there is sufficient room or plans to install a new boulevard tree at the front of the house?
Yes, we believe so. That obviously the district owns the boulevard, so further to the sort of the west, if you like, further along Cranmore, there will be opportunity for a boulevard street tree in that location, is my understanding from speaking with Parks.
Councillor Patterson, anything else? Are there other questions? Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and through you, and thanks to Councillor Watson for asking about the tree, because that was my very first question. Is there a possibility that permeable pavers could be used instead of hard surface on this? Because this is really quite a lot more surface area being covered in the front yard than what we normally approve.
Mr. Green.
For your worship, council could request that impermeable paving would still not reduce the amount of paving under the district's definition of front yard paving. So even gravel, which is a permeable surface, is not a permitted front yard paving. So even if it was impermeable paving, it wouldn't reduce that 58% number. It is essentially how we define front yard paving, is anything that is paved in the front yard counts towards that front yard paving regulation.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much, and through you, Mayor. I know that there's a back alley there, and so I'm wondering why they wouldn't want to put the paving or the parking in the back rather than in the front to kind of keep it more consistent with the street.
Councillor Braithwaite, since the applicant is here, why don't we invite them forward and we can ask that question of them. So procedurally, you heard the open portion. It's exactly the same. Just the name and municipality of residence. And then you can, so the question put was just our understanding of the rationale of putting the parking in the front and not the back of the house.
Okay, so that was...
Oh, just give your name for the record.
Rebecca McDougall.
Thank you.
So I actually, I guess to preface this, have made an amendment to my original proposal that I'm not sure that will satisfy council if they want to see my proposal, the amendment to it first, Or should I
Yes, although we'll probably have to send it back to staff to have it written in to accommodate the changes if they're not what's in front of us.
Okay.
So can you share that with Mr. Green? He can let us know whether or not this is what we have in front of us or if it's something that we have to give back. Okay, this is new? Okay.
Yes, this is brand new, even to.
Okay, that's great.
To me.
Okay. Well then, so procedurally, what I'd like to do is just hear what you're going to propose. And then procedurally, what we would do with that is give direction to go back and just have staff, because it would have to be reflected in the actual wording of the bylaw. We can't kind of change it on the fly at this meeting. But please just go over this. You can hold it up and you can just verbally tell us what it
I
is,
have one for
the
each
changes.
council member if they want.
If you have enough copies for council, then you can circulate it. Councillor Braithwaite online cannot, but what I might do is open up my camera and just share it to her. Oh. So why don't you sit down and you can give a quick overview and then we'll circulate the drawings.
Okay, so I'd previously proposed a driveway that would have been the equivalent of a regular size and a small car size wide. But based on council not liking the increase in hard surface, was going to propose a single wide driveway with tandem parking instead. So it would change it from being 17 feet wide to 13 instead, which would allow for the doors of a vehicle to both open and for elderly parents to use walkers, etc.
Okay, so the changes being proposed is really to the driveway?
Yes.
That's
to
correct?
Make it a single wide driveway instead of a double.
Okay, so changing the width from, sorry, just repeat that again.
It is written in the statement there, so it would
It
be
is just-
17 feet wide to 13 instead.
Okay, do you know what the percentage of the, you don't,
Figure
okay.
that out. No.
That's fine, the staff can provide that in the revised piece, so. So Councillor Braithwaite, do you want me to try and open up my camera and share this with you?
Actually, I can probably figure it out.
Yeah.
It's going from 13 feet, from 17 feet to 13 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm probably okay with that. Because it's gonna have to come back to us anyhow, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question would be to staff. I understand that the work that was being done without a permit originally, and so then the applicants have applied for a permit now. But can you just remind me if there's a fine that's associated with starting work without a permit?
Mr. Green?
Yeah, I think, obviously, yeah, through Your Worship, the district has the ability to issue fines for those people who haven't issued permits, but I think generally what our practice has been would be to charge double permit fees when we receive that building permit or issuance of that building permit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have in front of us a change, I think probably addresses most of the concerns that would have been raised here, but is there any other pieces that people wish to see? Have a conversation with the applicant about? This is the time to give direction because we wouldn't want them to come back again and say, oh, by the way, I had one other question. So, Councillor Watson.
No, I just wanted to thank the applicant for coming in with a revised proposal that proposes tandem parking instead. And I just wanted to clarify that the commission who saw this before was not council, it was volunteers of the Advisory Planning Commission, and they did make a recommendation. But I wanted you to understand that this is the first time we are seeing this, so it's timely that you have the alternate in front of you, and thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. I just have a question through you to staff. Could you tell me how large the boulevard tree was that was removed from the boulevard? Thank you. The municipal tree. Thank you.
I was just looking at the survey plan. It says 0.35 centimetres on the survey plans. So 35 centimetres DBH, I think, according to the survey.
So about 4 inches around.
Oh, sorry, diameter, breadth, height. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. 35 centimeters diameter breast height.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at this point. So, so the motion here is really to refer this back for the applicant to work with staff to revise the changes or the bylaw to reflect the changes that are being proposed. I think it's the simplest.
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. The motion right now is to refer it back. So staff will work with you we have to change our actual bylaws. We can't do that on the fly. So we're good.
We'll have to give notice again, so that may also delay. We may have to give notice of this application to those who received the notice previously, given that there's changes. So we need to work with the applicant, revise the bylaws, and then give notice, and then bring the application back for council's consideration.
Appreciate we do have those legislative standards that we have to meet, but appreciate that. Okay, so the motion is to refer this back to staff to incorporate the changes proposed. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. We move now to 9.2, which is zoning bylaw amendment 065 for 1391 Victoria Avenue. Mr. Green, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received a zoning bylaw amendment application for the property located at 1391 Victoria Avenue. The amendment is a site-specific zoning amendment to the residential R5 zone to increase the floor area ratio from 0.4 to 0.5 in order to facilitate the development of an addition to the existing single-family dwelling, which would accommodate a new master suite and additional bathroom on the upper floor, as well as a rental suite on the main floor. The text amendment also includes a variance to the total side lot line setback requirement. This application was reviewed by the Advisory Planning Commission on January 21st of this year, and the Commission recommended approval of the application. Staff are also recommending that the zoning map application be approved and the bylaw adopted. The applicant is also here to answer any questions that Council may have on the application.
Thank you. Just for clarification, I thought you said 0.5. It says in the report here 0.44 floor area ratio. Is that correct?
That is correct, but the bylaw is 0.5. We've sort of rounded up to 1 decimal point, and also given some of the complexities of that zoning bylaw in relation to floor area ratio in terms of some things that are not defined, we have erred on the side of caution in terms of the bylaws to ensure that when the building permit comes in, that we are not then having to come back to council to seek an increase to that FAR.
Understood. Thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any questions from members of council to the applicant? Is the applicant here? Ah, there we go. Thank you. Any questions? Don't see any. Looking online. No questions. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment, so we do have to follow this as a bit of a procedural piece. So can I have need someone to read aloud the reading first and second?
Your Worship, I would move that zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4948, 2026 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. This is the opportunity for debate, if any. Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will just say on that the Advisory Planning Commission were very supportive of this application in its protection for the heritage building, plus finding new uses to expand housing in the community.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
Your Worship, I would further move that zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4948, 2026 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded. Same seconders. Thank you. Don't usually debate on third reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And Your Worship, I would further move that zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4948, 2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That's, I think, the first time we've had under the new rules of doing all three readings and adoption in a single meeting. So we weren't legally allowed to do that until recently. So you broke new ground, sir, and good luck with your project. It is. I will just actually maybe as we're going on to 9.3, I will express our appreciation on behalf of council. Obviously, full support for this. For keeping the existing house, for doing it in the context of the original house, and making what is a very beautiful house more livable for the future. So thank you for what you're doing there. Moving on to 9.3, I have a development permit with variance for 1933 Crescent Road. Mr. Green, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received a development permit with variance for the property located at 1933 Crescent Road. The application is to permit landscaping works within the Shorelines development permit area and to seek approval of variance to increase the height of a retaining wall from 1.2 metres to 2.75 metres. This application was reviewed by the Advisory Planning Commission on January 21st of this year, and the Commission recommended approval of the application. Staff are also recommending that the development permit application be approved. The applicant is also here to answer any questions that Council may have on the application.
Thank you very much. Applicant, thank you. We may or may not have questions for you, so sit tight. Moving over to members of council, are there questions for the applicant or staff? Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So either to staff or the applicant. And it wasn't entirely clear to me about the subject area that's been essentially where the patio or the surface is, whether or not that was hard surfaced previously. It kind of implies that it was, or essentially was already in a disturbed area. But was the area that's covered by this new patio structure that's indicated here, was that previously a hard surface?
Sorry, Mr. Green.
Through Your Worship, the applicant may be also to elaborate on this, but my understanding from reviewing ortho photos from previous years is that this wasn't a paved area. There was a retaining wall, but there was no paved patio area there, acknowledging that it just looked like it was essentially rough landscaped area, probably with invasives, but yeah, the applicant may be able to further answer that question.
I think I'd better invite you forward, since I always like to get questions answered if they tend to relate to decision making. So same process as we had before. If you could just state your name for the record. We already have the, well, if you're not the owner, then you just give us your municipality of residence as well.
Yeah, my name is Sean Weddick, and I'm the owner of 1933 Crescent Road.
Welcome.
And maybe as a little bit of background to try to...
Sorry, Mayor, can he turn the
Oh, sorry.
microphone on?
There's a button in the middle front there.
My voice carries, by the way, but there we go.
I thought you were speaking into the microphone. It does carry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. I owned the original house before we built the new house there. And the area that we dealt with was badly neglected for so many years. And I think that's something certainly that Brian can validate. And I think you were asking about the area where there was a little patio near the waterfront. And there were a lot of bricks and everything else removed from there. But this goes back so many years. I suspect it was neglected for 10 to 15 years before we bought the original property, looked at remodeling it, and then eventually decided it was better to actually build a new house. And I humbly submit to council, while I've got you, is that we really thought we were grandfathered, that we were allowed to remediate this area for safety, accessibility, insurance reasons. And as soon as we were advised that that wasn't the case, we stopped everything and have dealt with the municipality. And Brian and his staff have been wonderful to deal with thus far. So anyway, happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton.
Thanks. Yeah, no, so I'm just kind of trying to clarify here, just in terms of to the point of grandfathering and that sort of thing, whether or not there was an actual, whether we're replacing essentially a structure with another structure. You know, the purpose of the Shorelines DPA is in part to provide, you know, vegetated areas and, well, vegetated areas both for the value of the vegetation and for erosion protection as well. So it would be less supportable if you have an existing patio area in disrepair that was replaced, not like for like, but with essentially an impervious surface or a non-vegetated surface, then that would imply a no change. But if this was an area that was previously pervious or in disrepair that could have been revegetated, that's a different interpretation. So what was there previously is at issue, at least in my decision making.
If I could comment, we did use permeable pavers. I think that was mentioned by somebody else previously. So that's what went there. And what was there before, and I can confirm there were probably hundreds of bricks that were removed from there. So arguably, there would have been something quite similar, but it was in significant disrepair. Secondly, I should add that we have a lot of green space, which I think is very welcome within that area. On both sides of my property, with all due respect, there's virtually none, if any, green space at all. And what we dealt with was, as I said, a pre-existing area. And I wasn't going to raise this, but it was raised at the APC, and I think this is something that council has to look at eventually. And that is developing a more robust communication strategy, and I recognize there are huge resource constraints within the municipality, but I unfortunately feel that there's a more reactionary ad hoc approach to these things. Somebody complains, and then you deal with it. And that was sort of relayed to me, but there are, I don't know how many properties, but let's say there were 50 to 100 properties that have already infrastructure within that 50-foot shoreline, and they have to go in there and maintain it for safety reasons. And I just think that it's an area with all the other competing demands on your time, but it's an area that something has to be explored, because I feel in my case I did what I thought was appropriate, and I think anybody looking at my property compared, and I know that the other properties, that's a different area, it's grandfathered, whatever they'd got away with before, but we've got all green space largely except for that, the areas that we dealt with on a pre-existing basis. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for the comments. I will totally acknowledge that people tend to think of these things as landscaping only and not requiring a development permit process, and so you're not the only person to have sort of stumbled across what requires a permit, what does not. But back to this table, we have a request in front of us for changes. Development variance with development permit with variance. Any other questions for the applicant? Don't see any. So, Councillor Smart, please go ahead.
I'd just like to move the recommendation.
So this is approval of the DBP with, the development permit, with variance. Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? I'll ask anybody who's not in support to speak up now, otherwise that's usually the most important piece to. Not seeing any? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
I'll still speak in support, Your Worship, and I think the point is well made by the applicant. I think it behooves us to, I think the point that the applicant's making here is that it behooves us to communicate really clearly about shoreline DPA objectives and those kinds of things. There are a lot of historical disturbances in the shoreline DPA. The shoreline DPA is there to, at least in part, help to, reclaim and revegetate, and reclaim those areas over time. So I think that there's the specific situation in here warrants support, but communicating to the public more broadly about the objectives of the shoreline DPA, I think, is a reasonable comment. So I think that's something that council may wish to take under advisement.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Seeing no, Councillor Watson, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to piggyback on those comments from Andrew Appleton. And of course, this applicant has come forward not understanding what was required and then done the right things. But being down along particularly that stretch of our shoreline, the evidence of what's gone on there is that a high degree of nonconformity with actually the requirements for the shoreline DPA, which is really disappointing. So I do think that there is probably some need for better understanding of what people's responsibilities are and the objectives of the shoreline DPA and the measures which are promoted for having some to be able to live backing on to the shoreline and still protect the natural environment with, as our language says, the softest possible protection measures. There's clearly lots of not soft protection measures along that particular strip of the bay. So yeah, anyway, I think, the applicant here has done a good job of trying to bring us back to that, and the plan looks sound, but elsewhere there's a lot of better work that could be done.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
We move to item 9.4, zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986. This is amendment bylaw number 4938 for 2125 Lansdowne Road. This is for adoption. So we usually have things have gone away and come back. So perhaps I'll get someone to move the motion to adopt.
Your Worship, I would move that zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4938, 2025 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting against this as I did for the same reasons that I did on November 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I like it when people speak on, and I too will vote in opposition. I do think that we had an offer of putting constraints on the subdivision to add, to keep the total number of units while allowing for the subdivision, and I still think that was the right approach. So, I already spoke to that at the last meeting, so I won't begrudge it again. I'm ready to call the vote. Councillor Green?
Thank you, Mayor, and I too will be voting against the motion as I did in November, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And then those opposed? Councillor Braithwaite, Green, and myself opposed. That carries. Good luck with the project. And then we move to item 10.1, which is the short-term rental bylaw amendments. And we have Mr. Bowl here, our Director of Community Building and Planning, to introduce. Welcome, Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report and the proposed bylaws originate from Council direction from May last year, requesting changes to our short-term rental arrangements, and prior reports were presented to Council in June, September, and October. In response to interest from short-term rental operators, the bylaws would revise the district's regulations, and definitions would be aligned with the current provincial definitions. And if approved, short-term rentals would now be allowed for periods shorter than 30 days, while setting a maximum of 60 overnight stays per year. Other new features are a business license requirement, proof of residency, a self-reported safety check, and enforcement options. Short-term rentals would be allowed in principal residences of operators, with limited options for short-term rentals also in secondary suites or accessory dwelling units if they are operated by the owner. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Well, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Bull. My only question was just with regards to I think it was indicated as potentially a 3-month rollout, and just wondering, so if an applicant comes to you tomorrow to move forward with this process, is it going to be 3 months for everybody? For those who are concerned about wanting to start to do a short-term rental for the summer, I'm just wondering if you could describe a little bit more the process and the day, sort of the projected day in which people will be able to start putting a listing up. Thank you.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, through you. Let me see. It would be a mix of times for individual applicants. After today, if the bylaws get readings, it's clear where the program is going and we can start preparing for the implementation. In this case, the program is fairly limited in scope, so I'm hopeful it doesn't take that much time. And then after the next future council meeting, when the bylaws are adopted, then applicants can put in their application for a business license. So I think then we would, depending on how much we get, when we get it, we would work our way through that. We just wanted to note that if everybody comes at the same time, because this is a new process, we anticipate there might be a bit of a time frame needed to do that diligently and also fine-tune the system where needed. So that's the background to that. So yeah, it also depends on how many we might see come forward right away. The province has 33 registered businesses in Oak Bay, but we don't know if everybody is immediately going to apply. So a bit of the background to that time frame that was mentioned. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Just for a clarification of all of us, I just want to make sure everybody's aware there was a significant amount of correspondence that came in, so make sure everybody had a chance to read that. Just a clarification, what is the current definition in the proposed bylaw of what determines a short-term rental? Is it anything under 30 days, anything under 90 days? What is the formal definition of the short-term rental? Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, or to you. Short-term rentals are if an approved dwelling unit is rented for a period that is less than 90 days. That's the same definition that the province uses. Then if it's for a period anything less than 90 days, it's deemed to be a short-term rental.
Okay. Thank you. Back to this table. We've had this has been at our table now a number of times. I think as in going through the correspondence, I'm sure you probably had the same feeling I did. These are all points that we have gone back and forth with a number of times at the council table. Ultimately, we've given this recommendation, but this is the chance at this point to either keep this or give some direction for changes before going through the reading process. Councillor Watson?
I'm prepared to move the recommendations in the staff report. There's 6 of them, and because they're bylaws, you'd probably need them read out individually, correct?
I do, but before you go
Yes,
there,
okay.
I actually do need to provide the opportunity for public input.
Oh, right.
So we're just,
Sorry, public.
Just want to make sure I'm concluding any of the questions from council before I go to public input. And if you're joining us online and wish to speak to us, you can raise your hand within the Zoom app, or if you're calling in or listening by phone, you can call the watching the stream, you can call the 1-855 number and hit *9. That's in the agenda package. So before I go to any kind of motion, they're going to come back to this table. Is there anybody here who wishes to address council on this item, the short-term rentals? Please come forward. Yes. So same process, the municipality residents.
My name is Arissa Henderson, live in Oak Bay. I just became aware of this just when it was in the Oak Bay News, and I read the letters this afternoon just before coming to the meeting, and I haven't thought about this a lot, but I have 4 children now, all in their 20s, and we've traveled extensively, and we've always stayed in Airbnbs or VRBOs because it's one of the few places that you can actually get a residence, that you can have 4 bedrooms or more and accommodate a whole family. So I'm just speaking in favor of it, and I don't think we're taking away any long-term housing if we're limiting it to 60 days or less in a year. So I don't think that's a huge issue. So anyways, I was reading all these letters and I realized quite a few of the letters that you have read were against it, and I just wanted to say I'm in favor of it. And I find when I vacate my premises right now, when we go on vacation, I very quickly have a lot of family members that are very happy to stay there while we're gone, and usually it's not left in the same state as when I come back. So it would be nice to make a little bit of income from it rather than just hosting relatives all the time. But anyway, that's just a very small comment. But
Thank you, Ms. Henderson.
I know, I thought about that. I love them very much, but my brother has 11 children and 2 dogs, so he's still welcome to stay. But yeah, it would just be nice to have the option of actually renting it out and making a little bit of income to support our own travels.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I don't see any other hands online. Anybody else in the room wishing to speak to us? Okay, back to this table, and I'll take your motion, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, and I will read them out. Can I read all 6, or do you need to what?
Please, one at a time.
One at a time, all right. That zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986 amendment bylaw number 4922, 2026 be given first and second reading.
Moved and seconded. I think this is a good point for us just to speak to the matter, because this has been back and forth with us many, many times. So you've given them, you read it in, Councillor Watson, if you want to add any additional comments.
Yes, no, I'm really happy to support this package. I appreciate the speed with which staff worked with, got consulting support and worked through this. And we've had a robust discussion around this at the table. We didn't all necessarily see eye to eye, but we got to a point where we were all in consensus about that this was a smart way to move forward now, to allow this on a sort of limited, in my view, conservative, but I still think a good basis to start a plan with, and we've already got an instruction for a report back after 18 months, so I think this is a very good place to be. And as the member of the public, Ms. Henderson, has just said, it does give a little flexibility to homeowners, and I don't think it's going to jeopardize the availability of housing or rental housing in the community. So I'm really happy that this is coming forward now.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to echo those comments, I was really pleased with the debate on this matter. Having being in the chair's seat and with the committee of the whole when we debated this, I think council was very constructive in how we approached this and kind of evaluated each individual component of it. And I think it presents a good, moderate solution that's in line with what people expect in Oak Bay, and I think it achieves the goal. So I think it's well reasoned, and happy to see it going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, and I really appreciate the staff report and the effort they've put into this. I will support the motion. I have times have struggled with this a little bit, but, and I want to acknowledge the letters that were written to us. People took the time to express their opinions, and I want to acknowledge that and appreciate that. Some of their concerns are some of mine, but I think it's worth a try, and I also think if it's coming back to us in 18 months, there will be good information. Oak Bay truly is short of good rental accommodation, I have to say, long-term rental accommodation. So anything that we can do to help the rental market is important. And I would not want short-term rentals to overshadow long-term housing. So that is a genuine concern that will be ongoing. But I will support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just echo a lot of the comments around the table. I think we've really found a good balance here, and we really worked well together to provide more options for affordability in our community, where we've heard a lot of individual stories from community members that they need this right now to make things work. And this is a little bit of us being able to allow for some things without jeopardizing the bigger picture of rental housing and affordable housing, because we have been fairly restrictive in this small step towards a creative solution. So really happy to see this going forward.
Thank you. No other discussion? I'm just going to make a brief comment, just because I think the letters that came in, as I said, reflected a lot of the conversation and debate that we had. And I just want to maybe articulate the rationale for finding the balance that we did. One is, I think, first and foremost, we really wanted to make sure we were not encouraging the loss of housing units to short-term rentals, and that really drove a lot of the limits of the total number of days, et cetera, the restriction of one per lot, all these pieces. It is more restrictive than some other jurisdictions, but that was the number one primary concern, and I think that was the same concern that drove the provincial standard changes as well. I think we also did a fairly good job of looking at what were reasonable scenarios to accommodate, and those were things like someone who has a student in the, in their secondary suite, but during the summer wants to rent it out for Airbnb, and it would allow for that to happen. So we wanted to make sure that those kind of conditions were amenable. And the 60 days, while not as much as others, I think we went back and forth between 60 and 90 a bit, and ultimately settled there. I think we'll come back and see what comes of it. We may ultimately change it to 90, but this is a slightly conservative way of starting, because it really ensures that the total amount of revenue does not supersede the amount you can get from renting it long term, and I think that's a really critical factor. I also want to just acknowledge that the enforcement piece of it, of using the provincial portal to help guide the enforcement piece, is really important, because we do have very limited enforcement staff. So I think of most of the concerns and ideas raised in the letters, I think we've tried to accommodate. Whether we got it exactly right, I don't know. But I did really appreciate the conversation that we had at this table over multiple meetings and back and forth with updated reports. And I feel very comfortable with what's going forward. But I thought I'd just take a moment here, just verbally, to kind of reflect back on some of the points that were raised in the letters that were written to us. So, not seeing any other hands, I'll call the question. This is for first and second reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
We'll keep going.
Please keep going.
That zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4922, 2026, be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? And for those wondering, we're doing there's a few bylaws that have to be changed simultaneously, so we're going to go through each of those. Go ahead.
That municipal ticket information bylaw number 4846, 2023, amendment bylaw number 4923, 2026, be given first and second reading.
Moved and seconded. I think we've done our discussion already, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
That municipal ticket information bylaw number 4846, 2023, amendment bylaw number 4923, 2026, be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And the last little bit of the package, that business license bylaw number 3603, 1988, amendment bylaw number 4924, 2026, be given first and second reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And finally, that business license bylaw number 3603, 1988, amendment bylaw number 4924, 2026 be given third reading.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Procedurally, for anybody watching this will go, and we have to wait. I think it comes back to the next meeting, is that correct? For, no. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, we first need to make sure we provide notice for the business licensing bylaw, so can't quite make that in time for the next meeting, but early March this will come back. Thanks.
Very good, and then we'll consider adoption at that point. That concludes that item on the agenda. So we have, that concludes all of our regular business, but we do have two motions arising. These are motions for referral of things to Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, or AVICC conference. For those members of the public who are, I'm sure, still watching by the thousands, AVICC and UBCM are the mechanisms by which policies are debated at a conference, and if supported, go to the province, and the province is required to provide a response. They don't have to do what we ask, but they are required to give a response. So this is the procedure here, that we make motions at various council tables around the province. They go to the regional committees or conferences. If they're supported, then they go forward. And so what's in front of us here is a couple of motions to bring forward to those conferences. Sorry, a little preamble there. Councillor Smart, please go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate the preamble. I will go ahead and read these one by one and motivate afterwards. So the first motion is $10 per day flat rate ferry fare for post-secondary students. Whereas post-secondary students...
You don't have to read the whereas. You can just read the motion.
Oh, okay, for
we
sure.
have the whereas in the report.
Therefore, it be resolved that AVIC and UBCM advocate to the Honourable Minister Mike Farnworth, Minister of Transportation and Transit, for a $10 a day flat rate ferry fare pilot program during non-peak hours for post-secondary students.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. As UVic liaison and someone who meets with UVSS, I was really keen to hear about what our students were facing as pressures currently in the community, and as with everybody else, affordability is one of the biggest issues for students right now. And there are many issues that our post-secondary students are advocating for right now, and two of them, this one that is in front of us right now is one of those two, really speak to the affordability issue and some of the tough choices that our students are having to make in our community. At this council table, we work really hard to support all generations in our community, and we are so lucky in Oak Bay to have our community college and our university, and these students bring so much to the vitality of our community, and I feel that going to AVIC, this is one way we can really give back to our students and champion some of the causes that they are dealing with at that provincial level. And so that is why I'm bringing this forward to you today, this one particularly around affordability, but also the options for students to travel for, as it says in the motion, co-op, employment, internships, conferences, networking opportunities, and visiting family. Students are having to make hard choices right now to not do those things, and it's limiting the breadth of their quality of life and their education. And this is particularly impacting our Indigenous students and those who are already struggling with affordability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. This is, of course, not endorsing this necessarily. It's really supporting the referral of it to the AVICC, but you do not need to support it if you don't want it to, you don't think it has enough merit to go to that body. Councillor Braithwaite online, and then Councillor Patterson.
Thanks so much, and thanks for bringing this up. I do support the goal of improving affordability and equity for students, particularly those from, as you said, the rural and Indigenous communities. However, I struggle with this motion because it asks AVICC to advocate for a very specific fare price and program design for BC Ferries. That level of operational detail is outside of AVICC's usual role and expertise, I think, and it risks setting a precedent where we advocate for individual user group discounts rather than broader transportation policy or funding solutions. I think this issue better addressed through direct engagement with the province or BC Ferries rather than through AVICC. So I might suggest that I'd be more comfortable supporting a motion that asks the province to examine ferry affordability for students and rural residents more broadly without prescribing a specific fare or a pilot structure. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Councillor, I had laughter in the room because I had, when Councillor Smart brought this up, I suggested that we do it as an AVICC motion, not as a direct advocacy, because we don't tend to typically advocate directly to the province. We tend to do our advocacy through that body. So, Councillor Smart and I were just having a laugh in the room here because it was exactly we were saying exactly the opposite of what my recommendation was in terms of process. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Any other discussion? Councillor Appleton?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate Councillor Braithwaite's comments, and I think that this is appropriate to go through through AVIC, mainly because, you know, AVIC is in, you know, almost a unique position as a local government association out of the local government associations in British Columbia, because it's coastal. It's literally in the name, and so advocacy about ferries has been core to a lot of AVIC initiatives over time. AVIC has really taken a big leadership role in terms of speaking to ferries, and I don't think that necessarily including a specific number precludes a conversation around the topic more broadly. I think it raises the issue and just gives a sense of scale of some of the cost pressures for post-secondary students. So I think the point is reasonable, but I think AVIC is the advocacy organization, as far as I'm concerned, that specifically relates to ferries and how significant they are to coastal communities. So I'm in support of this going forward.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Braithwaite already so well articulated exactly the same comment I was going to make. So obviously, we're kind of offside, perhaps, with the thought process on here. But speaking to Councillor Appleton's remarks, I guess as I read this, and I do think, I mean, this is really about BC Ferries business plan, and the reference to it being particularly relevant to AVICC because of being a coastal community. But as I read this would be for all post-secondary students. So anywhere within the province, students, should they choose to, could use the ferries at off-peak hours. So there's nothing in the motion that really gives any data to inform just the scope of how this could be, because it doesn't mean that it would just be secondary students on the island traveling. This says for post-secondary students, so that, I mean, that could be from anywhere, and it could be for any rationale. I mean, I don't know that you can constrain it to some of the things that are put in here. So I'm really having some hesitation at supporting it as it is written. Anyways, but I listened to other comments around the council table.
Thanks. I'll go to Councillor Green and then I'll speak.
I really, I like the spirit of this motion. My only comment would be, I tend to agree with Councillor Patterson. It would be nice to extend it and also put in a phrase about the BC Ferry Network, because it isn't just between Vancouver and the Lower Mainland. There are a lot of inter-island ferries. And especially for small Indigenous communities, they're having to use inter-island travel on ferries as opposed to the Lower Mainland big ferries. So I would just add wording that says the BC Ferry Network in the province, and that way you cover all the routes. Having worked for BC Ferries many years ago, I think that would really be helpful. And I was just going to ask a question about the $10 a day. How was that arrived at? Thank you.
Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to answer some of these questions. So I guess just the first request about this sort of why is the motion so specific? Students across BC have gotten together to work and come up with something as a whole British Columbia group of students. So the specificity of this motion, and there are project backgrounders that are available online, and I'm happy to provide for you, is something that is unified across the province, and the students have already advocated themselves to the province and are looking for more support to elevate their issue. And so that's where this currently stands. So all the specificity of this motion comes really from the student body as a solution that they have worked out in coordination with a lot of research and looking at the fact that it's, for instance, off peak hours means that it won't, it will be filling in ferries where they wouldn't necessarily have had students is the concept there. So it wouldn't be for any peak hour ferries. And with regards to the wording of the motion, my understanding is that this would cover all routes, the wording of the motion. Yeah, so does that answer all of your questions? Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Greenby, turn on your microphone.
A quick follow-up. Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. And I was just through the mayor. Oh, what was my other? Sorry, it just left me. Darn it. Okay, I'll try and remember what it was. Thanks.
I do know we have a member of the public who's asking to speak, but I don't think this is this is a direction to motion, so there's an opportunity through UBCM or AVICC. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are doing this through AVICC and writing a letter to the province as well, are they mutually exclusive? Could we not do both?
I would
Could we
suggest
not?
we do it through AVICC and make it a policy process. That'd be my strong recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to speak very briefly to this. I'm going to speak in support of the motion, although I'm not sure I'll support it at AVICC. I do think that generally speaking, if this is being brought forward by students, they want it debated as a policy piece, then I think that is the right place to be debating it. We bring in the voices of a wide range of coastal communities to talk to it. And the reason I'm hesitant on it is I recognize the BC Ferry Commissioner is given a very limited budget, and then they have to make all these very nuanced determinations. They're also in the middle of consultation process. They help determine some of these things. And there is already a $15 fare saver available. So having a pilot project unique to this may not be the most beneficial piece. That being said, there's probably other points of information that I don't have that would come out in the process. So I'm supportive of the motion as it is a referral motion essentially to AVICC for that discussion to happen. So that's where I'm at. Councillor Watson?
Yes, I just had a question for the mover, if I could. Based on the discussion we have had, and I was taking Councillor Braithwaite's points a little bit to heart, there is a specificity, and you've explained why there's specificity. We know that, but the motion doesn't really present that. So if it's coming to AVIC, I just wondered if there's any room for a slight amendment to it to make it clear that this really is the student's request, and as a municipality that hosts a lot of students, we're behind it. I'm just raising that as a possibility. Because I do support the general idea, but I think Councillor Braithwaite, flagged some things for me.
And I'll say process-wise, we don't approve the whereas clauses. Councillor Smart, you're welcome to add. You can have up to 3 for AVICC. So you could, if you, based on this conversation, wanted to add a bit more clarification to the whereas clauses, you could do that without any direction from this table or changes required. Ms. Hunt?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would also say that AVICC requires a backgrounder, sort of background information that accompanies this, and we can work with Councillor Smart on that backgrounder, which would include that information as well.
Thank you. I'm trying to keep us to a reasonable amount of time on something that isn't a decision here. I don't see any other hands. I'm going to call the question. The motion is to send this resolution to AVICC. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And then we have a second one here as well. Councillor Smart, please go ahead and read the motion in.
Yeah, thank you. You want the motion so that, therefore it be resolved that AVIC and UBCM advocate to the Honourable Minister Sheila Malcolmson, Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, to provide funding support to BC post-secondary student unions by establishing a food security grant equivalent to $1.50 per student to address student food insecurity as evidenced by the increased use of post-secondary campus food banks.
Can I just, for clarification, is that intended to be equivalent to $1.50 per student per day, or is that per student?
No, so it's per student. So when you're enrolling, like there's often a charge for like your bus pass per student, or so it would be like per student on campus. It would be a grant allotment based on population of
Student population.
Students, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Is there a seconder? You've been seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I thought this motion would be particularly helpful for us to bring forward at this body, considering we provided funding for the food bank up at UVic last year, and as we know, it's a little bit typically out of the scope of our grant and aid to provide that kind of funding, and the appropriate place for that funding, one could argue, would be the province. And so this is an opportunity for us to ask the province to step up and fund what we have been funding. It's just incredible the amount of food bank usage. It increased tenfold in the last few years, which is heartbreaking to hear about students having to choose between whether or not they're eating a healthy meal or buying their books. And what's amazing, though, is our community is so generous that there is plentiful food that is being donated out there in the community. But the work that needs to be done is getting that food to the students. And so to facilitate that, what is really needed is some part-time student jobs to be sustainably funded so that that food can be taken from the community organizations to the students. So it's really, and it's creating a benefit of those part-time student jobs through this grant, while being able to take advantage of our community's generosity. That is a simplification of the motion. There's also in the background quite a lot of detail around smaller post-secondary campuses that might not have the ability to have their own food bank, and how that grant amount per student could also be used for food insecurity in other ways. So it's been fairly well thought out, but I welcome any comments or questions.
Councillor Green.
Just a couple of questions. We haven't included, and I'm sure there's a reason why we haven't included Camosun College, which is also within our jurisdiction. I just wondered about that. And my other question is $1.50 enough? That was my other question. Sorry?
Councillor Smart, or Councillor Smart.
I said sorry, not Siri. Sorry, my phone just talked to me.
I'll pass this. Oh, is there more? Another question?
No, that was, so is $1.50 enough was my question. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to answer that question. So again, student volunteers from across the province have come together with this plan, and they do feel like $1.50 is enough to make a very significant difference to being able to serve and provide food for students. So yes, it is enough. And there was a second question I thought you had.
Just about Camosun, but this does.
Oh, so this does include all post-secondary.
Okay, is that clear in the motion that it includes anyone outside?
It is. It's just the whereas clause as an example.
Oh, whereas, sorry. Okay, thank you.
The motion itself is independent. Councillor Patterson, and then Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And we have been supportive of food banks up at UVic. I know that, and I know that the community is very generous when it comes to that. But I guess the times have shifted somewhat, and food banks across Canada are struggling with rising food costs and higher demand. And in many areas, in fact, I think there was just a preview of some on the island, where distribution centers are actually scaling up the service for greater efficiency and economies in bulk purchasing. So where volume's critical to success, it does make sense to consolidate programs. And I wonder if this isn't more of a time to think a little bit broader of the model, instead of just the way we have been rolling it out, but serving members of the broader community, students and all families in the community, through consolidation of efforts rather than fracturing it. So I hesitate at that, and I also will add that youth under the age of 19 are not permitted to use food banks, and right now there are a lot of youth that are actually responsible for looking after food for their younger siblings, and they can't go to any food bank. So there's definitely some problems with the provincial system of administering programs that provide greater food security, but I do struggle with this one because to add layers of administrative costs rather than delivering food is something that I struggle to rationalize, but I will certainly listen to other comments from the table.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to Councillor Appleton and then Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just speaking in support, it's eminently supportable and really appreciate it being brought forward. Being the parent of a post-secondary student and one about to become a second post-secondary student, living independently, this particular component of their budgeting and how it affects their sort of their lifestyle, their experience, their school experience has been profound, was a big eye-opener for me. And in our family and my kids have the enormous privilege of being, they will not need to draw on the resources of a food bank. They will be, they will always be supported, and that will, they do not have to confront that type of food insecurity. But just the pressures that it puts on individual students, on my kid and the folks that he knows, in terms of what a stress it is and what a significant component of their school experience it is, which was never the case even half a generation ago, not in anywhere near the same way that this is. So even in a very privileged family with a big safety net, this is still very, very, very present. So I can see how families approaching secondary education, with modest means would be confronted with this immediately. Food costs are extraordinary right now, so I'm in support of anything that can help support students in having that be less of a stress and not being an impediment to them actually engaging in their post-secondary experience. So I think this is eminently supportable.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to support the motion, and I just like to sort of respond to Councillor Patterson's musing about whether this is the right place to do it and whether it should be bigger. And I just say I was speaking to post-secondary food banks. There's many of them. They're well organized. I know from my experience at Camosun that's the case. One thing about them is that they are directly within their population that they're serving. They reduce travel costs, that they have ancillary things that they can add on to that function in the context of the food bank, which are also supports. And I think that they're operating already at enough scale that it, further efficiencies may not really be helpful in the context of the students they serve. So I think this is a model that's tried and true, unfortunately to say, across Canada and the United States, that on-campus food banks are very prevalent and doing good work around the whole issue of food security and making food available for students. So I think it is the right place to put the resources back to the students for their own use.
Sorry, Councillor Braithwaite and Green.
Thanks very much, Mayor. And I'm going to support this, but again, because I really support the intent of addressing food insecurity, and I don't want that to be lost in this discussion. But I wonder if this moves AVICC into more of a social program design and post-secondary funding decisions, which are clearly provincial mandates again, and you've probably already had the discussion around whether this should go to the province first or to through AVICC. But I just wonder, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it because of that, but I will support it because I think it's a very important thing to bring forward. But I'm just wondering if it's out of scope for AVICC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I'll just share my opinion on that, which is that if we want to change, the AVICC and UBCM are the models to request changes to provincial policy. So I think this is the right place for it to go. I do have Councillor Green for a second time. I'm just going to speak very briefly because I do want to get out of here. Again, supportive of this. I think it's worth going to the AVICC for conversation. There's certainly many other infrastructure funds and student loans and things like that that are also, of course, available to students. And I appreciate all the work that the UVic Student Society does. I know on a day-to-day basis of providing information to students about places that they can get other supports as well. As should not be the one and only place for this, but so again, not sure I will support it at AVICC, but I certainly support it going to AVICC to have a broader conversation. Councillor Green.
I think this is my first time to make comments. I think I was asking questions earlier, but I just want to say that I will support the motion also. I also would suggest sending a copy or including in the motion the Minister of Advanced Education or Post-Secondary Education. I think they should be copied in on this motion or on the request. And it is kind of appalling that we have monetized education, post-secondary education, to the extent that we have a food issue on campuses. It's very disturbing to me. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. I don't see other hands. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll get a motion to adjourn. And these two? Oh, yeah. No, I don't usually, just for AVICC motions, I wouldn't normally allow public input. Well, before I call for adjournment, you can either speak to it. Okay. 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 There's a representative, I think, from UVSS. Not to open that up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if any of you had any questions, but thank you for supporting both of those motions to AVICC, and I will continue to be in contact with Carrie to answer any of your questions, because I really appreciate you bringing those motions forward.
Thank you. We're now on to adjournment. I'm going to seek a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.